Hello, welcome to another episode of Leadership with Darrell W. Gunter. And I'm here with two phenomenal women, Miss Magenta Light and Miss Tina Trout. And Magenta is one of the founders of the Bloom Network. And Tina Trout has recently uh, joined back with her to talk about what's happening at the Bloom Network. And we'll talk a little bit about the Tina's signal craft and natural being. Ladies, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Daryl. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to bring Magenta into an introduction of you and your following. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Thank you. Magenta?
Yeah, I'm really excited to meet you, Daryl. Thanks for yeah, bringing us together.
So I'd like for my audience to get to know you both a little bit. Tina's been on the program before. Um, but Magenta, if you can start off by sharing with our audience a little bit about your background and also how did you come to be one of the founders of the Bloom Network?
I like to joke that mushrooms made me do it, which is very true. I used to be a professional piano player, and then I decided it was classical music, and I decided, right, wait, why am I playing Dead White Guys music? Millions of other people play this. I should probably do something more creative with my life. Moved to San Francisco and got involved in activism. And I'm from the Midwest. So when I moved to San Francisco, I quickly met people from many different places and backgrounds and realized I am not okay with the systems in the world and I want to do something about them and the suffering that I'm seeing. So I dove into activism and basically I became a founder of Bloom through exploring one, who has intergenerational trauma healing tools, and two, kind of the coming together of different areas I'm interested in, like sustainable fashion and ecology stuff, alternative economics and gift economy and more sane economies, social justice, and innovative uses of technology. And Bloom kind of brought all those together. And so I was like, oh, these people are having such phenomenal impact, the local grassroots leaders of these communities, but they don't have a sustainable business model, so they're burning out. So I thought the best thing I could do with my capacity is to work on that and get them a sustainable business model. So yeah, that's what I've been working on the last 14 years.
Okay. All right. And we'll jump into the Bloom Network in more detail in a second. And Tina, could you share with our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I have never worked for a corporation. I've always sort of been my own boss, and I've since very young had this sense that things could be working differently. I'm very aligned with nature. I'm very comfortable in nature and very sort of naturally observant of her systems and sort of have this natural understanding of how systems work. And so, yeah, as I sort of was witnessing how things don't work for most people
Hmm.
unless you're deciding to follow a career or work within certain constraints, that a lot of basic human needs are being neglected. Things that I needed, like freedom and, expression of my creativity and identity that was outside of anything I saw. And so just I ended up learning permaculture. I ended up from sort of some of the things that I saw missing in that paradigm. I started studying more indigenous approaches to agriculture. And that gave me a vocabulary that was principle based.
Hmm.
And I started to see the inherent relationship between nature and humans and how humans didn't necessarily understand that they were part of nature, and that was being the separation aspect was being exaggerated, and it was also being used against us because, we basically have come from an extractive kind of economy that doesn't 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 honor nature in the way that she
You know,
requires.
I like the word that you use there,
Mhm.
extractive. Could
Yeah.
you go a little bit deeper? I mean, when you hear the word
Sure.
extractive, you know what it means, but
Yeah.
let's talk about how folks are being extractive and how it's hurting
Well, when you have economic models that only look at certain kinds of value that is based on, a tree being cut for the wood rather than a tree being grown in a ecosystem to clean the air and to maintain water in the environment. It's just the way we've directed our values um, leads naturally to extraction because we're commodifying things that
Hmm.
give us a false sense of protection or give us a false sense um, of value when we're at the same time, extracting our resources and using them as sort of one-time use. I'm sure Magenta could come up with an example as well. I'd love to hear what she says about
Adina,
extraction.
what are your thoughts on extraction?
Well, I think of it as taking more than you're giving and having, yeah, these like taking and unsustainable ways of interacting, whether it's like humans' energy or creativity or
Mhm.
natural resources. And then, the polar opposite of that being creating systems and ways of life and working and being with each other that nourish life, that nourish people in holistically in our spirit, our expressions, our everything. Um, and honoring land and Mother Nature in that way as well, like honoring and nurturing the cycles of life rather than making them very flat and machine-like, pulling what we can to use out of it, like acknowledging the wise, like living aspect of the world.
And so for the Bloom Network, Magenta, what do you think is the main the vision, the vision, the mission, and the main objectives of the Bloom Network?
Yeah, I mean, on one level, our vision is creative liberation, and more practically, a world where social media participation directly leads to regenerative community action. Um, and one of the ways we do that is connecting people and projects and businesses as a network to rapidly
Right.
scale the initiatives that they're doing locally and bioregionally. So kind of networked in a region and globally. And we do that through a social media platform that is community owned. It's a platform cooperative, or we're almost finished forming that. But it's a full stack social network. You can join it now. And we, are sharing on there the kinds of stories that are happening by everyday people everywhere who are doing practices to make healthy local food systems, repair their watersheds, create healthy business networks that have, cooperative co-housing and farmland trusts. And there's a million like amazing things that people are doing in communities all over the world, but they don't get airtime on mainstream media because these activities don't make outside parties money. Again, they're not participating in the extractive company or economy. So we empower action and build movements at local, national, and global scale, and really create and promote alternatives.
And so the Bloom Network dot Earth, that's the website, and people can join. Is there any cost to join?
At the moment, it is free, and it's going to stay free if you start or have a local Bloom chapter. We make it really easy to start one. We have some templates for making a little meetup series or a discussion club or film screening. We kind of help you with that, even if you start really small. And then we'll be implementing subscriptions soon for entrepreneurs. We are able to offer them marketing services, which we'll probably get into with Tina because she's the expert in that, and that's part of the symbiotic business of how we grow all together, like Bloom, get it? And then I forgot what you asked.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that, can you share with us some recent success stories that you have of people who have come into the Bloom Network? They started with with like X and then they went XYZ. Can you give us an example of how the Bloom Network helped them to achieve their strategic objectives?
Yeah, I'll give one example and then kick it over to Tina as an example from a business that's incubating through Bloom. Um, in general, Bloom tends to act as a decentralized incubator, both on the ground and online. So, for example, one of our hubs is in Diamante Valley, Costa Rica, and they're a coalition of probably somewhere between 100 and 200 or more local businesses and nonprofits, mutual aid groups, just like building community. And through their connection with Bloom, they are being recognized for the commons labor that they're doing. They have a global community of support that's acknowledging and celebrating and witnessing them. We're able to talk through common issues like governance. How are you handling local governance, or how are we governing resources globally? Because they have a community, a cooperative association, and they own land together, and they have a lot of very deep processes. They're taking care of their own recycling, all these kinds of things. So they're able to help scale how many people they're reaching and influencing in the global community. But also they're connecting with another nearby local Bloom chapter, a little bit farther southeast of them, and they're mentoring them, helping them build more connective tissue, experiment with these new economy tools to magnify the kind of strength and circular economy building. That Bloom works with local campesinos and does a farmers market and all kinds of community building and empowerment sort of things. So they're now working at what we call bioregional scale in a larger area in Costa Rica. So yeah, that kind of like nurturing relationships, incubation and catalyst of specific initiatives. And then our grants program helps reward people for their labor. And then they have a local treasury as well, so they can determine how they want to spend that, if they want to invest in a local business or a community organizer who's holding a key role in their community. Yeah, that's one example of how a local Bloom is thriving in connection with us.
So help me understand if I see I'm on the website and I say I want to become a member and I want to start a Bloom network where I am, let's say here in Ambler, Whitpain, Pennsylvania. What are the best practices that one should follow in order to establish a successful location for the Bloom network?
Yeah, well, there are a few things. One, it's helpful to kind of map when you get started, like who's doing what in your community, if you aren't already like well across that and connected in your community. And maybe take a look at with if you have a team already, or if you're starting to build a team, get a
Mhm.
sense of what your personal goals are. So you know, are we primarily gonna like help provide connective tissue across different movements? Are we gonna be only focused on local food in our city? Are we gonna focus on teaching people about our watershed and different ways to care for that? And kind of, make the call there. You can always change over time, right? And then from there, it's just consistency, like deciding if we're going to do a meetup series with Skillshares or whatever kind of programming you decide to do. Like you cannot fail if you consistently do, say, like a monthly community event. Like magic happens. People meet each other, they find deep relationships, and it's really just that consistency and rhythm and helping people have space and like a deep container is the word I use, like a
Okay.
community that's it's
Mhm.
not quite religious per se, but it's inclusive of like real reality. And that's one of the differences of Bloom from, I don't know, something like a Sierra Club meetup or something. Yeah.
Okay. And so I've heard you talk about the word symbiotic and the operational business and design processing, excuse me, presencing. I think I Tina said that. And restoration. Can you define those for our audience and why they are important principles? They sound like principles to me. They sound like good principles. Um, could you define those and share why they're so important to the Bloom network?
Tina, do you want to start with that one and maybe
Sure.
end in the example of the business that you've been growing through Bloom?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a beautiful segue because symbiosis isn't something that you have to make happen. It happens naturally when the conditions are right.
Mhm.
And so symbiosis for me is when you have an ecosystem, a complex ecosystem that and a complex ecosystem comes about through synergy, which through succession, which means like over time, nature and ecosystems tend towards being more complex, but also tend to sort of lean in towards repetition or redundancies. And these redundancies both protect the ecosystem, but also create these feedback loops that are symbiotic in nature, so that everything that happens within that ecosystem ends up supporting life and supporting each other. And so, one of the conditions that's necessary for that kind of action is visibility over time. Magenta said it so elegantly that, magic happens when people are consistently coming together. And that's because it's allowing that space and that nested space for these patterns to emerge. And that's exactly what it is. It's a natural pattern. So symbiosis as a natural pattern for me as a natural farmer, putting together this crazy course called Signal Craft, which is an exercise in kind of finding coherence and finding the story and finding where you are both meeting your needs, but how you can meet them better through things like community or things like consistent meetups or just even ownership of data or cooperative functioning as a cooperative. Like all of those systems basically support and nest the function of symbiosis. So, what that feels like for me as a business is that we're speaking kind of a similar language, and also that I'm supporting a function within Bloom that lends coherence, it lends story, it lends um, identification of true needs and how we can meet them synergistically and how we can meet them through stacked functioning, which is a principle in permaculture that says, basically, um, you can do many different actions. How many actions can you do to support the most needs? And that ends up being like a synergistic satisfier. I know those are a lot of words, but I
Mhm.
guess the underlying theme here is that when all those things are in place and when you have an ecosystem that is supporting life,
Mhm.
um, magic happens. Like being in a Bloom meeting, and I've only been in a couple of them, but like I always leave surprised with a smile on my face and like really wanting to tell everybody the good news that people can actually get along and that people are actually capable of like mm, thinking creatively together,
Mhm.
um, and solving problems together. And what a refreshing thing to have happen in a meeting.
Right.
And so, yeah, just by the environment of Bloom, these things naturally happen, and it's surprising and unexpected. And I think that's one of the things I love about Bloom and being a business within it is just it makes me believe that humans are capable of the kinds of changes that we need to make to come into alliance with nature and with each other.
And if you could, Tina, again, if you could processing, if you could define it for us and the
Yeah.
importance of it.
Oh, you mean of symbiosis or
Yes.
what?
Mhm.
Um, what is it? Symbiotic. I think it's just when when two or more aspects of an ecology are working in support of one another. And
Mhm.
those overlays, the things that seem similar, the yes ands,
Mhm.
the the things that are slightly different but same but different, that crux of meaning when we come together and we're like, wait, you're doing that, I'm doing this, and we can do this together because we're both kind of doing the same thing. I mean, that's the feeling of symbiosis for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Megan, what are your thoughts? Magenta, I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. I will accept any M or color word as my name. Um, I have a lot of silly names actually. Symbiosis, I mean, it's an underlying principle of Bloom for one thing. Our whole architecture, our whole system architecture, like on the ground and the digital network, the economic network, it's all modeled on how mycelium work in nature. And mushrooms are, a lot of them are symbiotic, which means they're, transferring information and resources and nourishment across different species on the forest floor. And fungi help trees talk to each other. They help different microbes and nutrients go where they need to go and nurture and build life. And for example, with Tina's business, she was able to incubate Signalcraft in Bloom and prototype it really and run it for the first time in a values aligned community where she's also kind of co-working with us. And honestly, a lot of our volunteer teams are coming from the same place that we also all have our own businesses. And we're sort of, it's almost like a brain trust where we sort of a little bit catalyze each other's businesses and personal goals for growth, whether it's a career change or a specific business that we're trying to transition over to and grow. And then we mutually support each other by sharing and growing what nutrients we have together. And it works more like a garden or a forest and a living life system than a typical like B2B or multi-sided marketplace. It's not transactional, it's relational. And I think that's a difference of symbiotic business.
And so what is in your humble opinion the most urgent need right now within our society?
I'm going to jump in and say we need basically to focus on human needs rather than human values. And within ourselves, we need to re-examine what our values are and what needs lie beneath them, because like we all have the same human needs, and they're universal and finite, which means we can meet our needs,
Mhm.
and they include things like freedom and creativity, um, and we also need sort of like to be able to tell our stories and to find the coherence that exists between us within that meeting of needs and finding our story.
Magenta, your thoughts?
Mm, one of the urgent things I think is climate, but I think we talk about it wrong. To me, and I think to Bloom, it's a power dynamic problem. And we need to come together as people and have autonomy and express our autonomy to take care of the places we live together and witness each other holistically, change the power dynamic of capital so that the people with the wisdom about how to do the kinds of transformation that need to happen are at the decision-making table. They're weighing in on with their knowledge, like directly with people who have the financial skill sets. And we are doing we need to do a better job as humanity of respecting the multiple kinds of wisdom and capacity. And right now, our business and political and general power dynamic is skewed to those who are able to most express power over others. And our whole economic and power system is kind of in that gridlock. So that's what comes out to me as what's urgent to transform.
How big is the Bloom network now? Is number of chapters, number of businesses, number of people?
I think we're at 40 chapters now in about 16 different countries. There's about 30,000 people on the ground is our current estimate. However, the platform's somewhat new, so there's only 400 of them who have joined the digital network so far, and we literally just started marketing like 3 weeks ago. And I'm instantly like super overwhelmed. So that's been fun, like setting up the systems. But even with that, I mean, you can see that as like large or small depending on your frame of reference. But I would say the like depth and scale of outcome we've been able to have through that is very outsized. And this is common with a lot of what I call community-led development, where we have many groups in Bloom who are regularly doing like $5 to $20 million development projects for nearly nothing. Like they're building schools, they're rebuilding their entire like countries or like their regions economy and capacity to care for one another. And then, like the movement, Decriminalize Nature came out of the Bloom chapter in the Bay Area. It's a nationwide movement to decriminalize entheogenic plants and fungi. And that has been passed in many cities. There's, I think, over 140 cities like have processes in motion. We've been influencing the development of the bioregional movement, if anyone's come across that. Yeah, Bloom, even at that small scale, Bloom is a very like influencer kind of network. And I'm really excited to see it ideally scale like very rapidly in the coming years to a much larger scale so that more people can find these kinds of practices, participate in the initiatives near them that they're like looking for, but they're a little hard to find. And ultimately build more fulfilling lives together.
All right. Believe it or not, we have a couple minutes left, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to share with our audience any points that, through my lack of good questioning, I might have missed that you want to stress.
I think I would just like to add that one of the surprising things that has brought a smile to my face and is that over time, as different hubs bring in their impact reports and they start putting down on paper and telling in story what they've been doing, that as a cooperative, we're not outsourcing that data. We're not putting it behind we're not putting it behind silos. It's something that the community owns in a sense. And so over time, the fact that we own our own data as a cooperative has shown that regenerative action is not only possible, but it's incredibly viable as an economic source of value that is just shockingly applicable and operating. So good news out there. When we start aligning ourselves with nature, it works.
Mhm. Magenta?
I think the only thing I have to add is go have fun with your neighbors. A lot of us spend a lot of time on screen, like afraid, looking at our phones or at our jobs, being uncomfortable. And in some ways, it's very, very simple. Go do fun stuff with your neighbors. The one thing I keep thinking about is like neighborhood like yard conversion parties. If you have like a yard with grass in your neighborhood and someone is open to converting it to like food plants or native plants or something, like what a great way to go meet the people who live around you and have a great day together and almost like a mini party and learn about ecology and connect. And yeah, that's like an example of like the spirit of Bloom and getting along with one another and building the kind of relationships that nourish us.
Excellent. And so people can go to the bloomnetwork.earth and learn a whole lot more about the Bloom Network. This has been very exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Miss Magenta Light and my dear friend, Miss Tina Trout, coming on the show to talk about the Bloom Network. Please go to the bloomnetwork.earth site. Magenta, Tina, thank you for coming on the program.
It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Daryl.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Leadership with Darrell W. Gunter. We want to wish you have a very blessed day. But remember, leadership, it begins with you. Have a great day.